Hi guys, welcome back to BS Rugby. It is Scotland against Japan on Saturday to close out the Autumn Nations Series for the Scottish. And I am, of course, joined by Dan from Stuck in the Scrum. Dan, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm very well, mate. I'm very well. Feeling a bit better after the weekend. So, yeah, I'm good to go. I'm ready to be hurt again.
Oh, brave words, brave words. Well, let's talk about last weekend then. It's Scotland against the Springboks. Unfortunately, it was a 30-15 defeat for the Scots. What did you make of the game?
Yeah, it was. Especially, I'd say, until the 60th minute, I think Scotland sort of still had a chance. The South Africa found the best way of neutralising Scotland. They took away their set piece. They dominated on the scrum, at the line out in Scotland. Really struggled to get a foothold in that game. It reminded me in a way, if anyone watched the Scotland versus Ireland game in the Six Nations last year, it reminded me of that. Like every single time we got a line out, it just seemed like we were losing it. Every scrum we were giving it away, even though we had the heavier pack, which shocked me going into it. Yeah, and it was just we had some good moments. I don't think the game was won or lost on any massive margins. I think Mapimpi had a fantastic game, had some really good moments. In Scotland, they couldn't get a foothold in the game other than one or two moments of magic. They really struggled to get going.
No, I agree. I thought the way that the Springboks controlled the game, and it's something that they've become so good at over the last few years, really, is that, they'll go through the phases, they'll do the dirty work. It won't look pretty, but it works. They'll work hard at the breakdown, they'll compete there, they'll bring their bomb squad on, and they'll have an impact as well. And I thought the way they just controlled the game just nullified the big threats that Scotland had. Although Hogg obviously got over, and we'll talk about him later on, Finn Russell probably didn't have the impact that he would want to have on a game. Rufus McLean was quite quiet as well, and they just nullified what you're able to do. The Japanese will come into this game off a win. They beat Portugal 38 points to 25 in the first meeting between the two sides. Of course, the week before they played against Ireland, which they lost 60 points to 5. I'm going to take you down memory lane. I apologise to any Scotsmen or Scottish women watching this game, but we have to mention it. The last time these two teams met was back in the Rugby World Cup. It was a win for the Japanese, a historic win, as they beat, of course, they beat Ireland and they beat the Scots, this time winning this game by 28 points to 21. But before those two times, there were wins for Scotland in 2016 on the summer tour to Japan. The first one was a 16-26 win, the second being a 13-26 win. Let's not dwell too much on those games, but what are your memories of that game in 2019? Where did it go wrong for Scotland, and what do you think Scotland have improved on over the last couple of years going into this one?
Well, Japan deserved the win in the World Cup in 2019. It was their home World Cup. It was one of the best squads that they'd ever had. They put themselves out and showed that they could battle with the big boys. Scotland, I think, back in 2019, were still finding their feet a little bit. I think Gregor Townsend was still talking about playing the fastest brand of rugby in the world back then. I know Scotland still likes to play fast and loose, but the pace that he wanted to play back then was ridiculous. And it was we were one of these squads that we could turn up on our day and probably beat the All Blacks, but we could also lose to Italy. We were so inconsistent around that time. I think Scotland are a bit more grounded now. Japan aren't the team they were in 2019, unfortunately. I can't. They beat both Scotland and Ireland in that World Cup. And at the start of this tour, I couldn't see them beating Scotland or Ireland. And I'd probably stick by that now. I mean, by no means should they be underestimated. And I'm glad that Gregor Townsend has picked a fairly strong squad. He's not gone and thrown all his youngsters in. He's shown Japan some respect, and I think you have to, because Japan are one of those sides where if you don't respect them, they will beat you. But if you take them seriously, I think Scotland are just too strong for this Japanese side at the moment.
Well, yeah, as you mentioned there, it's a very different Japanese team. A lot of the stars from that 2019 Rugby World Cup have hung up the boots or not currently playing for the national team. And as you said, Scotland are in a very different place as well going into this one, in very good form, apart from that South Africa game, obviously. But against the Wallabies, what impressed me was the way that you did manage the game, the way that you controlled that game, because, look, it wasn't a great game of rugby. There's no denying that. But the way that you guys managed to control it and get the win was what impressed me quite a bit. And let's have a look at the squad then. I'll run through it and get your thoughts on it. This is the team that Gregor Townsend has named for this final fixture of the Autumn Nations series, starting with the fullback. Stuart Hogg, of course, is our fullback and captain. Darcy Graham comes in for Rufus McLean and returns to the starting 15, with Chris Harris and Sam Johnson returns in the centre, and Duhan van der Merwe is on the opposite wing. Finn Russell and Ali Price remain as the halfback pairings. In the front row, Jamie Batty, George Turner and Xander Fagerson, with Scott Cummings and Grant Gilchrist playing in the locks. And the back row is Jamie Ritchie. Hamish Watson returns to the starting 15 and Josh Bayliss plays at 8. On the bench then, Stuart McInally, Pierre Schumann, Yavan Sebastian, Sam Skinner, Dylan Richardson, Matt Fagerson, George Horn and Blair Kinghorn. What are your thoughts on that team? A few changes in there, but still, as you said before, a very strong side.
Yeah, they're a really strong side. I mean, that Scottish side is probably about 80-85% strength at the moment. It's I mean, bar one or two players, I think it's really, really well. I'd like to see what Jamie Batty can do. I think George Turner starting to cement his place in as Scotland's hooker. It's weird to think we were light up in options a couple of years ago, and now we have 4 or 5 top class hookers, and we can't decide which one we want now. Xander Fagerson, I'm good to see him. I think he's going to keep developing, getting to be some player. I'd like him to calm down a little bit, bring his temperament down. I think he can be too aggressive off the ball sometimes and give away stupid penalties. Cummings and Gilchrist, a good pairing. I know we're not playing with our best locks at the moment, so I mean, when Johnny Gray's not there, I think that there's still a lot of experimenting done on Gregor Townsend's part to see what his best pairing there is. Richie and Watson got into the flankers. In fact, you can't pick anyone else for Scotland. They are our top two. Josh Bayliss at number 8 surprised me. I thought he would have stuck with Matt Fagerson, but I'm excited to see what Bayliss would do. 8's probably one of the only other positions in the Scotland squad that isn't 100% nailed down. And then the back line pretty much picks itself. Ali Price, Finn Russell, Duhan van der Merwe, Sam Johnson, Chris Harris, Darcy Graham and Stuart Hogg. I mean, I can't see how you'd swap that much more. I mean, if Redpath was fit, I might have tried Redpath in this game. I'm disappointed that Rory Darge didn't get to play on this tour. I was really looking forward to watching him get his first cap. And Rufus McLean, I might have wanted to see play as well. But look, Darcy Graham is on fire at the moment. You can't bench someone like that. I think the only reason he got dropped for the South Africa game was due to the high balls, and Darcy Graham's about 4'0", so it just wasn't the right game for him. But no, it's a good squad. I've got no complaints about it. It's a responsible squad. If I had to be super picky, I might have liked to see 1 or 2, substitutes on the bench to, a wild card that you'd like to try out, but can't really complain.
No, it is a strong team, as you said, and as you said, very little changes really, and it shows the amount of respect that Gregor Townsend certainly has for this Japanese team. Talking about the Japanese team, you may notice I'm not Japanese, although I am wearing a Japanese top. So when I go through these names, I apologize if I butcher a few, but I will certainly try my best. Some of them are much easier than others, but we'll go from
Miller.
That's not too difficult, but let's see how we get on. Let's start at the fullback then. So Yamanaka plays at fullback with Fafita and Matsushima on the wings. We'll talk about Matsushima later on. Nakamura and Nakano are in the centre with at 9 Nagare and then Matsuda at 10. In the front row then Miller, Sakate and Valu with Cornelson and Moore playing in the locks. Captain Michael Leach returns to the starting 15 with Himeno and Labuschagne is captain at 7. On the bench then, Horikoshi, Inagaki, Kakinaka, Gunter, Tatofu, Saito, Tamura, and Riley smashed it. Absolutely smashed it. I don't expect you to know many names from there, Dan, but let's talk about a couple. Michael Leach is the captain, of course, very well experienced. How big of a boost do you think he is for this Japanese team, having someone as big and as important as that coming back into the team?
I think it settles them, especially for some of the young lads that the Japanese had. You can see the calmness he brings to the team. I like the little walk he always does around the pitch before every match. All the players put their hand on the shoulder, the sign of respect as they do their lap of honour, sort of like pre-match, which I really like. They're very respectful, they're very calm, but they're a very, very fast side. One thing that Japan usually have up their sleeve compared to sort of all the other big nations, because they can't compete with a lot of them, blow for blow, they always have a new play style, they always have a set piece. There's always some card they've got up their sleeve, and sometimes it works for them, sometimes they don't. I think that since, I know they won in Portugal, but I think their last win, other than that, was Scotland back in the 2019 World Cup. I had a quick look on my lunch break, but I think that's their last win, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's been a long time since they've really got a big win. They obviously pushed Australia pretty close a few weeks ago, lost heavily against Ireland. And I think the big thing that I learned from that game from Ireland was if you can match them physically and you can draw them in, then you can have the ability to go wide. And I'm not sure if that's truly in Scotland's DNA. So how do you expect Scotland to approach this game? How are they going to play? Because it's like playing against Fiji or another team that likes to play fast, quick ball. They're going to jump on any mistakes, going to jump on any loose balls at all. But Scotland like to play quite similar to that. So how do you see Scotland trying to approach this game?
I don't think that the Japanese will be able to bully the Scots. I know that Scotland lost last week to South Africa. I'll go back to that sort of later on. But they weren't really bullied by the South Africans is what surprised me. I mean, they were outplayed in the set piece, but Scotland aren't really a team that can get bullied by the heavier packs anymore. I think Scotland might actually try to reverse it and try to throw their weight around a little bit against the Japanese. They might try to play them at their own game, because I think at the end of the day, man for man, the Scottish squad's slightly more skillful. It's just that little bit faster, that little bit quicker. They'll try to sort of turn the screw on the the Japanese, like the South Africans did to them the week before. I think Japan probably would have learned from a lot of the mistakes that they did against Ireland. It'll be an interesting game, but I think Scotland should win this fairly comfortably.
Interesting. Famous last words. Let's have a look at some of the key players for the game. And I wanted to highlight a couple. First of all, we got to mention this man, Stuart Hogg, equaling the try-scoring record, of course, for Scotland. And before we talk about his impact on this game, how important is he to Scotland? And how important has he been for Scotland over the last few years? What has he done for Scottish rugby, do you think?
He's been a bit of a talisman for Scotland. He's always been sort of that world-class quality, but unlike sort of someone like Finn Russell, he's usually been there. I'm going to go against the grain with most people. I don't think Stuart Hogg had the best game last week. I know he scored 2 tries, and it's hard to say that for someone that scored 2 tries, for them not to be sort of having the best game. He was in the right place at the right time. But I think it was because he was the last man that he scored. There's if it was Rufus McLean who was on his outside, would have scored again. I think he missed a few under the high ball. I thought that part of his game had passed. He's the only downside with Stuart Hogg, for as great as he has a habit of trying too hard. I'm not sure if it's that there's a lack of trust in his teammates, or if it was the position he was playing. Like, I was watching him against the South Africans, and instead of defending from deep, he would defend from the midfield sometimes, and it was almost like he wasn't going to rely on Finn Russell or Rufus McLean to make that last tackle, which left Scotland exposed at the back. But look, he's a hugely talented player. I mean, his spiral kicks, everyone knows how dangerous they are. You can't kick against him. His running game is right up there with the very best in world rugby as well, and he's a top player. When Scotland play at their best, I think it's funny. Stuart Hogg usually doesn't do anything flashy on the days that Scotland play their best. He's sort of more of a team unit rather than an individual. I think he tries to prove why he's the captain a little bit too hard. That's just my opinion, but look, fantastic player. I think he just sort of needs to calm it down a little bit.
Yeah, I've got to agree. He's had a tough few games, but certainly a talisman for Scotland. The other man that I think that could be quite crucial to the way that you look to play on Saturday and to have that connection and that fluidity really in the middle of the park is this man, Finn Russell. Deemed, people say the Maverick. I'm not too keen on that term because I think his control of the game has improved so much over the last few years, especially since he's been at Racing. I think his understanding of what to do and when to do it has improved massively. I look at that back line, and it's a pretty settled back line, isn't it, with Sam Johnson and Chris Harris in the centres. How important do you think Finn could be to Saturday's game?
Massive. I mean, he is Scotland's talisman. He makes the magic happen. I don't like the term Maverick. I mean, it's used by a lot of rugby casuals that maybe of it was a tag that he got 3 or 4 years ago, and he never they never shook it off. But anyone that sort of follows rugby day in day out to any sort of degree will know that he's very consistent. Finn Russell, and he's one of the best 10s in world rugby in my opinion. Very good. He got long range kick. He's calmed down in the last couple of years as well. I think because the back line is quite settled, he knows when to throw the magic pass. Where in the past he would just throw it whenever he wanted to. Now he knows there's a time and a place for it, and I think it goes very well for him.
Definitely. No, I think he's going to be really key to the way you play. The one man I wanted to highlight from Japan was this man, Matsushima. What a player he is, playing for Clermont currently, and great memories of 2019 for him, for sure, in this fixture. What are your memories of him on that day? How would you describe him?
A nightmare for our side. If you give that man an inch, he's gone. He is gone. There's very little. There's very little men that can match him speed for speed. And his pace. Like I'd love to see a race between, I'd say, him, Duhan van der Merwe, and Louis Rees-Zammit just sprint the length of a pitch. I think he might have it actually. He's probably the fastest man I've ever seen on a rugby pitch, and that's even after seeing Louis Rees-Zammit's try against Fiji. He is incredibly quick. And he's not just quick. He's not a one-trick pony. He knows how to cut in. He knows his racing lines. He knows how to beat his man. He's a good passer of the ball as well. He's good at the dummy run. He's an all-round fantastic player. And
I agree. He's obviously playing at Clermont, which is a big level of rugby. It's European rugby, so it's a new style, and he's managed to adopt that. Let's talk about how you see this game going then. So how do you see Scotland approaching it? First of all, how do you see them going for it?
I think that they're just going to play their own game plan. The one thing I'd say about Scotland is going into the first one when they played Tonga, they experimented a huge amount just for that, and it all came up well. Against a Australia, they won the game, they saw it out, which I think does good for the Scottish mentality. But they were clearly very rusty. And they played South Africa. I think they went wrong by trying to play South Africa instead of trying to play their own game. I think that they might have got a better result if they stuck to their guns instead of trying to anticipate the South Africans. I think the Irish have sort of proven that you don't have to adapt to the team like the South Africans as well. You play your style of rugby. It's up to them to try and stop you. I think Scotland are getting to the level where they should be good enough to trust in their own style of play and make it the other team's job to stop them instead of trying to stop the other team. And then I think they're just going to try to perfect their game, finish it with a high. I don't think it'll be as frantic as some of the other ones. I think Gregor Townsend will try out a few combinations, a few set pieces, and really sort of cement down in some key positions how he's going to set up his squad going into next year's Six Nations.
Yeah, I agree. I think Scotland needs to play their own game, but understand that they need to have control of the game. Once the game gets out of control, which I felt happened in that World Cup match, that is what the Japanese will tend to thrive off, and that's what they look for, is those mistakes. And Japan haven't had the greatest time of recent weeks, really, apart from that win against Portugal, but they are a dangerous side. They showed against Ireland in the summer that when the ball is loose and when there are options to go through the hands and the offloading game, they're very, very good at that. And you don't want to get dragged into a basketball game where it's going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Here we go then. What is your head saying and what's your heart saying for this one? How do you see this one going?
Both of my head, my heart will say Scotland, and Scotland by a fair bit. I don't see them beating them by as much as the Irish did. I still see Scotland winning it by between 30 and 40.
Oh, wow. Can I have a score prediction then?
I don't think it'll be as big as Ireland's 60 points to 5, but I could see like a 53-15 type thing.
Okay.
Yeah. I think Japan just haven't played enough games. I think they played after the World Cup, I think the first game after that was British and Irish Lions.
Yeah.
And then between then, they played Ireland, which was the first game. They got beaten quite sorely. I think they've been getting a bit better, but they're not at the level to compete with the tier 1 nations at the moment, I'm afraid.
No, I don't think it'll be as big a scoreline as you're suggesting, but I do expect Scotland to win quite comfortably. I'm going to say Scotland by 20 to 25, so I'll say something like 40 points to 18, something like that. I expect Scotland to win pretty comfortably.